get some money. Every day we blowing gas. Every day we in the mall. Every day we blowing cash. I do this every day. Every day I do this shit. It's just an ordinary day. Every day I get some money. Every day we blowing gas. Every day we in the mall. Every day we blowing cash. I do this every day. Every day I do this shit. It's just an ordinary day.
I'm Face from Flight School TV, and I'm here with my man's Bruce, and we're here to talk about a lot of things. So I mean, just to start off this interview, I want you to explain who you are to those who may not know, like your backstory, where you from, your education and things like that, and how you got into the fashion industry.
Well, I got in it knowing early in life that I wanted to be a buyer. Ever since I was 9, I knew I wanted to be a buyer. And how that happened was I overheard a conversation with my mother and one of her friends, and they were talking about her friend had a friend who was a buyer. When my mother got off the phone, I said, well, what's a buyer? She said they travel when they buy clothes. Something about that traveling stuck with me. So in high school, I went to Whitney Young, and I was the first senior class out of Whitney Young. And
wow.
The counselors ask you, because it's my junior year, what do you want to do? I said, I want to be a buyer. So they said, well, why are you here at Whitney Young? Take your marketing and this and that and that. So I did. And when I graduated, I went to Southern Illinois, and I was kind of torn between radio and TV, fashion merchandising.
Right. So
I had a friend, he was 2 years older than me, and he was a radio and TV major. And I didn't quite like the classes that he had to take. So fashion merchandising won out. But before I got into my major, I had another buddy that was there with me. He was a business major. He said, Bruce, he knew I loved clothes, so he's like, let's do a fashion show. I said, okay. So
this is in college?
This is in college. So I got so involved with this fashion show. We made a commercial for it. We had it running at the student center. We had these big auditions and tryouts, and
so your love for this started early.
It started real early. So the show, the fashion show was called Fashion Past, Present, and Future, right? So I had like the journalism, people that was in journalism, broadcast that was on the student radio to be the commentator, which is now Troy Tyler, who was at V103. She was a commentator.
Oh, yeah.
And so we did this show on the home ec patio down in Southern Illinois. It started at dusk. When it ended, it was night, right? So the show was a hit. But I flunked out of school because I was so involved with that show. I flunked out. So I came back to Chicago. I sat out a year, and I petitioned back to SIU to let me come back in. So they let me back in. So now it's time to declare your major. So I go to the home ec building, and the counselors that were interviewing me, they like, you Bruce Gage? I said, yeah. She said, you the one did that show, right? I said, yeah. She said, oh, you in, no problem. So I was, accepted into the College of Fashion Merchandising.
That's what's up. So, like, how did you end up doing what you're doing now?
How I got to this
point.
From
the leap from the high school years of trying to figure out what you wanted to do to the college years where you knew what you wanted to do to right now when you're doing what you want to do. So how did that
that happened? Because I had an uncle who was a clothing fanatic like myself, and he was 20 years my senior, and he was like my best friend, my uncle, my brother. We were just cool. We could talk about anything, and he said, Bruce, when you graduate from school, we're gonna open a men's clothing store. So while I was in school, he opened a ladies store with my aunt and one of my uncles. It was called the Funch for Ladies. It was on at 79th and Cottage, right?
Oh, okay.
So after I got my degree, I felt like I was king of the world.
Right.
I felt like I could go work for any store in the country. Wrong. I couldn't buy a job. Carson's, Weibo, Sears, Kmart, Toys R Us, Neiman's. I couldn't buy a job. And I used to think that it was because I was black. But after I got into my own business, I understood the problem is that nobody that owned the stores looked like me.
Right.
So what would have happened if I went to Neiman's or Bloomingdale's and I'm a buyer, right? Mm-hmm. Let's say I'm buying women's dresses. That means that dress that I buy is going to end up in the window, the magazine, or in the store on display somewhere. Right. So that means that I'm dictating where Mr. Goldberg and Mr. Silverstein, where his mother, his grandmother, and his sister's hemline's gonna be, and they not giving no black man that kind of power.
Right.
So that was why.
So you was around during the time where, like, it was before my time, mm-hmm. but like the reputation of Dapper Dan mm-hmm. is huge, mm-hmm. and I hear stories and reports and just, people talking. They were saying that Dapper Dan was ahead of his time in creating things that was getting stolen. Mm-hmm. Was you around to know the truth about things like that?
Well, the first thing...
Things that was in our community getting put on mainstream.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's been happening since day one. The first showroom that I went into in New York, the Jewish lady told me, she said, black folks should own the clothing industry because we understand color, we see design, okay.
We naturally got that flavor.
We just naturally got it. Yeah. We got it. So everything that's in fashion comes from the street. Like the leg warmers back in the late 60s and 70s were real popular with women. Right. That came from the prostitutes. Okay, that's where leg warmers came from.
I never knew that.
And a lot of everything comes from the street.
Yeah.
Okay. They send people around in our community to look for new trends.
Right.
Because we are natural trendsetters.
Yeah. That's still going on to this day.
Yeah.
Because Chicago is pioneering the way for a lot of things that's going on. And a question that I always ask is, do you feel like Chicago get the respect it deserves as far as like worldwide and the way they view us? Because right now we get a lot of headlines for the violence, but that's in pockets of the city. That's not the entire city. Right. How do you feel? Do you feel that we get the respect that we deserve? Because it's people like yourself and others that's been doing Diego at Leaders, V-Dot, Zoe from Fashion Geeks. It's a lot of good people that's been doing this for years. And you see the success of other brands, not to downplay, because I support some of these brands like Supreme, that is just $1 billion company all of a sudden. When do you think that power will shift to our city and we will get that respect that I feel we deserve?
Well, I think we get the respect and we don't get the respect. Okay, it's kind of a two-way street there. But what happened with the urban fashion? Let me tell you this story. You have to hear this. When Cross Colors first came out, right? I was one of the first stores in Chicago to bring Cross Colors to Chicago. Okay. And when I went to Vegas, the Magic Show, our trade show, the show was at that time basically 95% white. Okay, so Cross Colors comes to the trade show and they had this corrugated steel booth and you could not walk in it. And typically that kind of booth settings came from the European shows. You can't just walk in them. They have beautiful booth set up. And Cross Colors had this big old black man with a bald head and orange overalls standing out front of this corrugated steel booth. I said, oh my God. I said, I gotta buy these jeans, right? So I go in, I wrote my order, and so this was say August. The show is twice a year, so it's August and February. So when I came back to Magic in February, half of the show looked like Cross Colors. They tried to copy it.
Wow.
Okay. And the first thing they teach you in design school is it's okay to copy, because everything has been done. And it's basically who interprets it first and how you want to interpret it. Okay. So nothing's new.
Right.
So what happened was all of these Asian companies had knocked Cross Colors off. So now every other booth in the Magic show is like McCormick Place. You know how many buildings McCormick Place had? They got like 4 buildings.
Yeah.
So imagine all 4 buildings full of clothes for 3 days. That's how big Magic is. So half the Magic was looking like Cross Colors with colored jeans.
Wow.
So what happens is those Karl Kanai, Fubu, Nietzsche, them guys were giving Levi Strauss a run for their money. Levi was about to go out of business, file bankruptcy. Okay.
Wow, I never knew that.
So what happened was Liz Claiborne and a lot of the big white fashion companies bought the black companies
To keep them relevant.
They bought them and basically put them on the shelf. Okay. And this is what's wrong with Black America and Black culture. Every time our leaders get in position, they sell out.
Right.
Okay, BET sold. Okay, what was it? Carefree Curl, Soft Sheen back in the day. They sold. Okay.
Sometimes they see that dollar amount, but don't see the bigger picture.
It's a real big picture.
Right.
Okay, and it basically is priceless. You can't put a price on it.
So now in 2018, we got the internet and everything like that. So if we see something that's hot in Miami or Atlanta or California, New York, it's a button away. But when you was coming up, y'all actually had to travel to get those brands, to get that outfit, to get those Air Force Ones and shoes like that. How difficult was that? And was it as big as it, like, was the culture, fashion culture, sneaker culture, was it as big back then as it is in 2018?
It was not. And again, that's kind of a negative and a positive for our black community, is that the sneaker has changed the whole dress code of America, of the world. Okay, you know, it was a time when sneakers were worn, it was for gym.
Right.
Okay.
You bought basketball shoes to play basketball.
It was for gym. You did not wear gym shoes to church.
Right.
You did not wear gym shoes to work. So what has happened with society is we live in a relaxed world, and it's too relaxed. Okay, and this is what's wrong with society now. There's no rules, there's no respect. Okay, when the church started allowing people to come as you are, that took a big bite out of the whole industry. Okay, so like I say, it's kind of a double edge.
Yeah, because you used to have to get dressed up for church,
right?
Wear your church shoes, your button up.
So now, a lot of your clothing stores are closing because of that reason.
Right, because nobody feel the need to buy suits. They
ain't buying no tie.
Right.
Okay, they want to wear T-shirts and jeans and gym shoes.
Right.
Okay.
So if you back then, and I'm saying back then because honestly can't pinpoint a year, but I was told that if certain Air Force Ones came out, it was only released in New York. So, and it wasn't like you can go online and buy that. So you actually had to travel. If you was really into shoes that much, you actually had to travel to New York to get those shoes. That's how it really was?
Yeah, because New York has always been like the fashion capital, and and the way that happened is because it's right there close to London, Europe. Okay, so the trends tend to start overseas, in Europe and London. Then they'll come to New York.
Right.
Then they'll come to Chicago.
Right.
Then it gets to LA.
But
And LA has always been slow, because by the time they get the trend, we on to something else.
right.
Okay.
And that's something that I wanted to ask you. Is like Chicago, people from Chicago, since I can remember, I mean, my uncles, my great uncles, my grandma, like we always had flavor, you know, so much soul and originality. And it just seems like a lot of that essence has been taken away from the originators and spread worldwide without paying homage to where it came from. Now, you might know firsthand about a lot of these things that was going on, or I was wondering if you might have some like insight on why or how it happened.
It happened because we don't control our narrative and control our history. We let other people tell our history, because we as people of color, it's like we're ashamed of our past. Okay. And you know, like now, you know, I'm relaunching my Negro League baseball line.
Yeah, and I definitely want to get to that in a minute.
I sell more to white people than black people, because we don't like our history, we don't like our past. Okay.
And why do you think that is?
That's because
is that like lack of knowledge or lack of leadership?
is both. Because I was on a plane once with a retired white general, and me and him had this discussion. I said, you know, I think if we knew more about Egyptian history, I think the world would be better. He said, well, Mr. Gage, he said, you learn about who's ever in power, that's whose history you learn. It's that simple. So what you're doing, you know, creating this program, this network series of interviews, this is how you have to tell our story.
Right.
And create the narrative for us. Let us tell our story.
Right.
Because nobody's going to tell our story like us.
Right.
And that's the whole purpose of my Negro Baseball League line, is to tell our story. It's bigger than just the sweaters and the jackets. It's the story behind them.
Right. So, what after all these years from high school to college to 2018, is still keeping that passion and that fire in you to keep pushing forward and doing your custom clothing and with your Negro League jerseys that you also do, and amongst other things that we will be showcasing in this episode as we continue to talk. But it's so much to take in once you walk in this environment. It's so much to take in, and it almost make me feel like I'm right at home. And it's a beautiful thing, and it's a warm environment. And I strongly suggest that if y'all don't know about this place, y'all should definitely look it up. He gonna give you the information on how to find them and how to reach them after we continue this conversation a little bit more. But what continues to push you?
Just the fact that I understand how powerful clothes are. Clothes is the most powerful thing on the face of the earth.
I totally agree. I totally agree.
Because, they say the three main staples are food, housing, and clothes. But clothes represents who you are. It tells the whole story. People read you a block away just by what you have on.
I tell people that all the time.
So it's important for me to set the pace and create the image to make people look good, especially our own people. Okay, because probably the worst trend that looks like it doesn't want to end is the sagging pants. That's the worst trend ever.
Well, pants is getting tighter and tighter these days.
Yeah, so they can't probably sag.
Yeah, they probably can't sag no more, so they might be coming up.
Right. Or they gonna be coming off and they gonna be wearing dresses.
Yeah, we hoping we don't go that direction.
Well, it's starting. I don't know how many have you ever seen Hidden Colors, but they make reference to that. Or that's going to be the next phase, because this is all set up by design.
Well, hopefully, with what you're doing,
right,
and what I'm doing,
yes,
we can
not let that trend happen.
We can offer an alternative view of a lifestyle of a successful, not just a black man, but a successful, strong man.
Yes.
And we can set examples for others to follow if they're looking to search for who they are. And that's why I commend everything that you do and your persistence over time, and for you to still be doing what you love. I just want to salute you for that.
Thank you.
And I had the chance to look at all the merch that you have in here. I'm leaving here with something. I'm leaving here with something.
Thank you.
So I definitely want my audience to know that when you step in this place, you feel the warmth, you feel the vibe, and you see the quality. So I want to get more into like the Negro League jerseys.
Sweaters.
Sweaters. It was jerseys, but
sweaters.
The sweaters. You're doing the sweaters.
Right.
Okay, so like, how did you have to get the license for that, or how does that work?
How it works is that it is public domain. Okay, the first time
by public domain, you mean if it's in the public, you can't use it.
Excuse me, you can use it because the patents have they so old till they've gone away.
Okay? Right.
But the first time I did the jackets in the early 90s, I didn't have a license. So this time around, I was kind of really persuaded to go ahead and get a license. And best thing I ever did, because what happens is it keeps people from copying the sweaters. Right. And some of the proceeds,
that's a huge thing to do.
And some of the proceeds go to the retired players. Okay.
That's even more incentive. Even more incentive to support this thing right here, because a lot of those retired athletes are having trouble supporting their life.
Yes, they
and
are.
Their lifestyle.
Yes, they are.
But it's not because they don't deserve it or they didn't. It's of lack of effort. It's just almost like they got forgot about, and their contributions.
It was major,
Right.
And what people, they kind of have to remind me too that it's not just Negro baseball, it's American baseball.
Right.
Okay, this is American baseball.
Right.
It just happened to be that at that point in time they couldn't play with the white major leaguers, so they had to create a vehicle where they could play. It would just happen to be a league with minority players.
Right.
Because also too, what a lot of people don't understand is that the Mexicans couldn't play, the Puerto Ricans couldn't play, the Dominican Republic couldn't play.
And they dominate the MLB now.
And I'm going to tell you why they do. So when I got the license for the Negro League from the museum, it incorporates the Latin League.
Which
Mexican League.
museum did you have to
It's
go
in
to?
Kansas City. The Negro League Museum is in Kansas City.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it included
The Latin players, the Latin League, because in the wintertime, the black players would go to Mexico and Cuba and play baseball.
I never knew that.
And they got paid a lot of money, and they got treated like real men when they went there. And a lot of them didn't come back to the U.S. Okay?
Yeah.
And also, too, there is a city in Mexico. Mexico is called Veracruz.
Yeah.
And it's Black Mexico, because what happened was when the slaves escaped from Louisiana and Florida in the Gulf Coast, they crossed the border into Mexico. So that's so Veracruz has a big black population still today, and they were part of the Negro League.
That's something I didn't even know.
Okay, and that's why I say this is why I'm telling the story through the sweaters,
Right.
because it's bigger than me, it's bigger than you, and it's a story a lot of people don't even know.
But should know.
They have to know it.
Right.
I was at the at the trade show showcasing my line, and 2 booths down was this Mexican kid, and he came over and he saw our booth. He said, "Fly ball." He said, "Negro baseball." He said, my grandfather played in the Negro League. He's Mexican.
So fly ball was the name of a league?
No, that's my brand. That's,
that's
my
your
label.
brand.
My brand is Fly Ball.
Fly ball.
Right. So when he saw the sweaters and we got to talking, he said, "Yeah, my granddad, he played in the Negro League, and he had a lot of friends that played in the Negro League." So the next day, I brought my book, my history book about the Negro League, and his grandfather was in the book.
Wow. Wow. So, like, moving forward to where we are currently, you got the Negro League jackets, sweaters, and what's next for you?
What's next is to create a whole fly ball store. So I'm creating merchandise. There's gonna be bags. There's gonna be baseball gloves. There's going to be
A lot of nostalgia.
bats. Yeah, for some reason people love bats. I don't know what it is about baseball bats. People love to collect baseball bats. So we're gonna do some bats and
Because nostalgia is coming back. Like everything, they said, like it always comes back
it
around.
repeats every 20 years.
Yeah, and like right now, everybody is getting into the vintage.
Yes.
And I can't imagine a better time for a company like yours to be successful than now.
Right.
Because everybody is back into vintage.
Yes, they are.
And you got a
It's
quality
classic.
product. And I'm not saying that because I'm sitting here talking to you. I'm literally saying that because I went over there and touched that sweater and felt how good that felt. I gotta leave with that one, so I'm just letting you know.
Okay.
I'm leaving with that one on my back.
Okay.
So for just to broaden the conversation to the entire Chicago, since we are in Chicago right now. What do you see Chicago trending towards?
I see Chicago. It's trending upscale. Every day, you asked me this question earlier when you came to see me about New York. Every day, Chicago's looking more and more and more turning into New York. That's why I see it, because the real estate, just the way they're setting up the highways now.
I mean, in the emerging brands of Chicago, like Leaders, they've been doing their thing for over 10 years. Fashion Geeks, Joe Freshgood, Fat Tiger, and this is just to name a few. You know, Success, VDOT, shout out to VDOT. You know, it's a lot of brands that's out here doing their thing and have been doing it for a long time.
And I'm proud of them, because I watched all those guys come up. You know, I like to call them, you know, kids. You know, I watched those kids come up and grow into, you know, adults.
So you was around in the early stages of...
I saw them. They all at some point would come to me or look up to what I was doing. And that's another thing that I'm proud of, to be a measuring stick or a mentor to all those names and brands that you are naming. Because that's the other side of the coin, why it's important to have black-owned businesses.
Right.
Okay, you know, I will have people, men, women, whoever come to our store, and they would complain about the prices or whatever. And once they got over the sticker shock, you know, we had to, you know, tell them too, even before they bought, is that this tie, it's not about me, you know, putting this money in my pocket. It's about having a store here in which you can come to. And one day your kids might want to be in this business.
Right.
And they'll have someone they can come and talk to, because they're not going to be able to go talk to Mr. Marshall Fields or Mr. Bloomingdale. He ain't going to talk to your kids.
He not gonna take that meeting.
He ain't going to be there for them.
Right.
So this is why it's important to support black-owned businesses. And what happened was, because you're younger, desegregation set black folks back another 50, 100 years. Okay? And I used to talk about this with my uncle, which I started the business with. He said, Bruce, black folks during that time, a black man was a boy. No matter how old he was called a boy. So we had to stand up and fight for our rights, human rights, okay? And what happened was, after it was okay to go to the white store and drink out the white water fountain, we forgot all about our community.
Right.
And our community went that way, and we took all our money to them.
Yeah, and that's always been something that rubbed me the wrong way. Like I literally have arguments with friends of mine, because, and I said it in an interview that I did with a kid named Kevon, and he's starting this clothing line called Brilliant. He got the Chanel patches. It's a very good quality hoodie, and he made quality shirts. But it's something that really bothers me, that someone like you, not only do you have a good product, but you have history in this business that justifies whatever you choose to charge. And it upsets me when I see people try to lowball you because they feel like, oh, well, you're not in Macy's, you're not in Nordstrom's, you're not in Saks. Come on, man, let me get this deal. Come on, man, you charging too much. And that conversation really bothered me, because these same people will go into Gucci. Not that I got anything against Gucci. I support all brands, Louis Vuitton, but the part that bothers me is that these same people that will talk to you about your price points will go to Gucci and buy a $300 shirt that just has a letter G on it, and you're offering a higher quality for the same price point, but our people would rather go to Louis Vuitton, Gucci, and once again, I gotta stress this, that I'm not anti anything, because I sometimes wear these clothing lines, but I also will be seen in a leader's jacket. I also will be seen in Flyball, you know. But it's just something that bothers me, that is an issue with us.
It is an issue, and I'm gonna tell you a story I had back in the '80s, late '80s, when I'm gonna call them the street pharmacists were operating on the street, making stacks of money and coming in the store with briefcases full of money, right? So these particular guys, this day, they go down to Versace, and they come back on the south side to my store, LaFunch. And I know these guys had spent every bit of $5 grand, $10 grand down there.
Yeah, tall money.
Versace store, right? They came in my store, you know what they bought? Some socks. Bring all the bags in so I could see them.
You can see
And buy some
that
socks.
they've been doing a lot of shopping, but they come in your store
buy some
and only buy
socks.
some socks.
Yeah.
Like, how is there a way to repair that mind state at this point? Like, because
it is.
if we can transfer the power, like, the sky's the limit.
I see it slowly turning, and you have to do it. You have to do it with visual, with communication, like we sit here doing now. It's gonna be a process.
Right.
You got to remember that we've been. First of all, this United States is just a little bit over 200 years old.
Right.
So this is a very new country.
It's still young.
It's very young, okay? So there's a lot of uphill battles that we are, taking on, and it's gonna take time. Because you gotta remember, 1965, that was like the first time when black folks could go downtown on State Street and try on clothes in the dressing room. 1965.
That's not that long ago.
That's
My grandma's
point.
still alive.
That's my point. Okay?
So what's some of your most successful items of clothing that people order, like when they see it, they usually gravitate to? Like, what's been one of your most successful items of clothing?
My coats.
Your coats? Yeah,
I love my coats.
we're gonna definitely have to show our audience those coats.
And since I have this tie on the table, let me tell you why.
Let me hold this up for the viewers.
Let me tell you why I designed this tie. I've bought neckties for 25 years from hundreds of tie manufacturers, from Italy to Paris, New York, LA, Chicago. Thousands of ties I done looked and seen. You always see, I never seen but one time a black man on a tie. You see monkeys, you see dogs, you see cats, you see birds and airplanes.
I never paid attention to that.
Tie.
I never paid attention to that.
That's why I designed this tie with this black man on it.
What material is this tie
Silk.
made from?
It's silk.
Silk. Once again, Good design, high quality. Why would you spend your money anywhere else?
And see, you just getting to know my story and what I do and how I do it. And I'm glad I'm able to share it with you, and you're able to get it out there.
I'm glad for you to actually take the time out your day to sit down with me, because it's been an honor.
No problem. Thank you. So this is the big man. This is the little man.
That's
Okay.
good quality right there.
Mm-hmm.
That's good quality. What would one of these cost?
Those are $30.
That's a good price point.
Yes, it is.
So for our viewers, I'm definitely gonna get a little brief walk around and show people the items of clothing that we've been talking about during this interview. But for those that might be outside of Chicago, how can people reach you?
We have a website for Flyball. It's flyballthestore.com. And you can call me at 312-391-0831.
Can you say that one more time, just for the people that just needed the time to get the pen and paper?
Right. That's flyballthestore.com. And our direct phone number is 312-391-0831.
And you got it. That's Face from Flight School TV, sitting here with my man's Bruce, and I'm about to get into some footage of the clothing that we've been talking about all day. And y'all gonna see what I see. And y'all gonna definitely wanna shop. Make sure you look them up. Thanks for viewing.
So this is my friend Craig Rex Perry, and he is the top black fashion illustrator in the world. He's worked for Nike, and Adidas, Sears, Gianni Versace.
Wow.
And
He did this illustration?
yeah, this is some of his work, and he also illustrated on the neckties that you took out the black man on the tie.
All right.
That's Craig's work. That's his illustration.
What's his name?
Craig Rex Perry.
Craig Rex Perry.
Yes.
If you don't know, now you do.